Today is a very special day because after a short 4-year break, we are talking to Penny again. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you for having
Welcome
me.
back to the Russian-speaking realm. And today we're going to be talking about some strange things, as I have recently found out that not only the TV show Stranger Things is based on the real secret projects like the MK Ultra and the Montauk project, which is public
Uh-huh.
knowledge by now, but also that some of the supposedly fictionary elements of the show may have been true. And I accidentally found that out when watching one of Penny's older interviews. So I went on and checked, and the Duffer Brothers, the creators of the show, actually mentioned that they wanted to call the show Montauk, and they wanted to base it on the whole Montauk story and wanted to set it at Montauk. But then at the last minute, somehow, they actually changed their mind and they set it in a fictionary town in Indiana called Hawkins. But the year that it was set on is 1983, which is the key year for Project Montauk. I think it was the year was shut down or something.
1983 is about the time that Junior was created.
Exactly, yes.
The Air Force was booted out of Camp Hero, and they actually did move Project Phoenix to Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So that is very real. It's also not officially Air Force. It's officially Department of Energy.
Right, which was featured in the show.
Yes, so
Yes.
that was accurate as well.
So do you think the first question is, do you think there is any chance that they could have made it up on their own?
The Duffer Brothers?
Yeah.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. They had access to something or someone who had been part of it.
Yeah. So they talked to at least a participant, maybe an insider. Yes.
They probably talked to someone who was part of running it, not in a hands-on position, but one of the supervisory people.
Okay.
There were supervisory people, some of whom have had mind wipes since. So not all the people involved actually remember it.
Okay. So one of the key elements of the show that got my attention is this so-called realm called the Upside Down that they feature and they mention, and it's supposed to be some fictionary, I don't know if it's astral or physical plane that is parallel to ours. What do you think?
Reality is made up of layers of frequencies. How you guys still have radio there, don't you? We do here.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, radio that comes out over the air. So when you're right on the frequency, the sound comes through clear and perfect, and you think it's the only thing that's out there.
Yep.
You change the dial just a little bit, and it's fuzzy. You change the dial just a little bit more, and you might get an echo. Okay, what they're calling the upside down is an echo of our 3D reality. Now, all of these are, okay, a lot of people are going to argue with me, but I've navigated it. When you are on frequency, it's as 3D physical as we are now.
Okay. So you're physical there and it's physical to you.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's an echo of this reality, but it doesn't have the same ecology.
Okay.
The one that they are calling the upside down, we called it the down below.
Almost the same.
Almost the same. And we considered it a mirror universe. But not everything made it back and forth between. They had a lot of insects, a lot of spiders. They had a lot of reptiles. Those flower-headed monsters,
Yep.
those actually exist.
Okay. So that's another bit that confirms the insider knowledge of the creators of the show, right?
Yes. There, I don't know how far you've seen into the story. I've watched all of it
Yeah,
that's
I've
out
watched
so
it
far.
all. Yeah.
Okay. So for your audience who hasn't, we're going to give some spoilers.
Okay.
Um, the young man that 11
Mm-hmm.
pushed into the down below, the upside down.
Mm-hmm.
There's not that there.
Okay. The Vecna guy.
The Vecna guy is
Yes.
not there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fictional.
Okay.
That was part of their plot.
Mm-hmm.
The giant spider that
Yep.
oversaw everything,
Yep.
that's real.
They call it the Mind Flayer. So
Yeah,
he was there. He was the only one there, or they were like creatures that had,
that's
were
part of their ecology.
okay. So
What you would call top apex predator.
I see. Okay.
Um, it is dark there most of the time. Things have a very degraded.
Mm.
I think that's the right word, degraded. But then there's nobody there caring for anything.
Okay.
So it's like, like you go into an abandoned town and there are no people caring for things. There's no one undoing the entropy. So there's dust, there's dirt, there's spider webs, there's insects crawling everywhere. There are plants taking over. And these are not healthy plants because there's not enough light for healthy plants. These are the mosses and things that grow in the near dark. So it has this general air of everything's falling apart.
Okay. It's like an entropy kind of reality.
It's an entropy reality. And when you first go into it, at the beginning of the show, when she was stepping in water while she was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very real.
Hmm.
That's your first sensation when you go. And they wanted us to explore it. This was both a testing of our psi abilities and an exploration of another realm. And for us, it was an escape from the never-ending abuse at Montauk and at Langley.
So that was, I'm sorry, so that was in Montauk that you did this?
It was at Montauk that I first did it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got back to Langley, they had the reports and they wanted me to go back. Once you have been somewhere, your psyche knows how to go back.
Yeah, creates a reference. Okay.
It creates like a landmark.
Uh-huh.
Computer terms like a bookmark for your browser. It will mark it and you can go back. You just have to recreate the mindset. Now, it was an escape for me because my life at both Montauk and Langley was extremely abusive. There was not a day that went by that I wasn't raped by somebody. And I was 4 when I got to Langley. And so this escape into this other realm, even though it was dangerous, and I was there without weapons, it was safer than where I lived.
So you would physically go there from the Montauk chair?
With the chair, I would physically go there. I'm not sure I was actually physically there whenever I was at Langley. I think it was more astral projection. I had the ability to bilocate where I'm almost physical. I can interact gently. I guess I can talk about this. A couple of 3 years ago, Og Tellis was on Twitter and he was talking about his consciousness being trapped in a tank. And I've always had a fondness for Og.
Mhm.
I don't remember ever working with him, in any of these programs, but I've always had a fondness for the man. And so when he said he was trapped, I thought I was remote viewing until I found myself there on top of the tank. And I opened the lid and I pulled him out, and then I couldn't maintain it any longer. And I wasn't sure if he actually knew it was me or thought it was, a ghost or something. But I've recently had contact with him, and yes, he did know it was me. Yes, he had seen my face. He knew it was me.
He was there, and he was there in real time.
I don't know. Okay, they make clones of us and they put our alters into
Right.
these clones. So we are sometimes living parallel lives
Yeah.
with alters.
Okay.
And that's what I think it was one of his alters was in a clone and trapped in a tank.
Okay.
And I bilocated and got him out. So this is something that I've actually pulled off in real life. Me, Penny, not someone out in space. So this is an ability that I managed to salvage from the mess they've made of my life. Before we started recording, you talked about the experience that I'd had at Montauk when I tried to run away. And I would end up, I was in the chair. I was so little at the time, they had to put me on a peach box for my shoulders to touch the electrodes in the chair. And they had me strapped in. And they would tell us, focus on the image at the end of the tunnel because you would get lost. But I knew where there was it looked like a manhole.
Okay.
In ceiling.
Right.
And I would go through the manhole, chair and all.
Oh.
And I would end up in another frequency. And there I would end up on this dirt road. And I would squirm out of the chair and, kick the box out of the way, squirm out of the chair. And I would be almost naked because they wanted the electrodes to touch my skin. And these creatures, people, I guess people for lack of a better term, they were intelligent, they were kind, they were orcs. But instead of how we draw orcs with green skin, they had brown skin.
Mm-hmm.
And they wore clothes very much like the late 1800s. Those waistcoats with the tails, and they didn't have knickers, they had long pants. The women had full skirts, but the bust part was snug, like people dressed in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And some of them wore hats like that time period. They weren't the real fancy tall hats, but they were that sort of style. And all of the clothing was brown. And they had these houses that were peasant cottages, and they were painted white, and they had thatch roofs and fences around their garden area, and there would be flowers and fruit and vegetables growing in the garden. And I was about 6 years old, and they would usually come out with some sort of a blanket and a bowl of soup. They didn't take me into their house because they knew the Draco was coming after me. And the Draco was just doing his job. He was one of the turtle people. Their military caste. He wasn't an alpha. And his job was to drag me in the chair back. And he was quite efficient at it. He never hurt me. He just came and got me and dragged me back. And the last time he came and got me, the man who was running the program then got really mad and was just going to dump me into the incinerator. And this Draco stopped him, told him that because I was capable of going into another dimension or frequency and taking the chair with me, that was a very rare quality even among his people, and he wasn't going to let him kill me. So I have a different point of view about these Draco than a lot of people do because he saved my life.
Okay. So the orcs, they knew about the Earth realm, I guess, right? They knew who you were when you appeared there.
I don't know. They never really talked to me. I could hear them talking amongst themselves.
Okay. So, but they weren't like really shocked to see someone.
They weren't afraid of me, no.
Okay, yeah, they weren't afraid of you. Okay.
They weren't afraid of me. They weren't afraid of the Draco. They didn't know he was coming.
Oh, they knew. Okay.
Yeah, they knew he was coming.
So you weren't supposed to end up in that realm at all, right?
No.
You were on an assignment somewhere else.
I was on an assignment that was time travel.
Okay, and where were you supposed to go, usually?
It was a general store in the 1880s, somewhere in the western United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to steal an apple from a bushel basket on the front display.
And what was the purpose of this exercise?
They were testing the butterfly effect.
Okay.
The butterfly effect is that if you step on a butterfly in the past, you can change all of history. I do know the results of that exercise. I was told about it on Mars. The results are that there are key individuals throughout history that matter.
Yep.
And the rest of us are basically space fillers. But
so that apple didn't really make a difference.
No, the apple didn't change anything, but I wasn't supposed to eat it. I was supposed to bring it to them, and they sent someone else to take it back.
Oh, okay.
I eventually did do the exercise after they chipped me.
Okay. So back to the upside down, what was the purpose? How did they even arrange this how do they tell you to actually focus on something? Do they create the portal first and you have to focus on the portal, or?
They create the portal first and you focus on the portal.
And the coordinates are there, so they enter the coordinates. They know
they enter the coordinates.
Okay.
They know where those are.
Okay.
It's only if you go through manholes.
Right. that they kind of
story.
right. So what was the purpose of the mission to the upside down? Did they instruct you to do anything specific, or?
They wanted me to try to make contact.
With whom?
Any intelligent life form that was there.
And was the Demogorgon one of them?
There is nothing native there that's particularly intelligent, except for the giant spiders, and they are telepathic.
Wow.
The mind flayer, they call them in the show. Those are telepathic.
So did you?
I made contact several times. I soon learned not to, but I was sent to do a job, and I knew I wasn't going to be left alone until I did it their way. The Demogorgon is a mindless predator.
Uh-huh.
He has no conscious awareness. He simply eats. He eats anything that moves.
Okay.
Um, Basically, like you would get from an amoeba or a coral.
Hmm.
The mind flayer, those spiders, those were apex predators, and they were on the mental level of eagles.
Okay.
They're not thinking like we are, but they're not stupid either.
Any results from those missions to the Upside Down?
They were just exploratory. I'm sure that every asset that survived Mind Fracture and survived Montauk ended up going there. So there would be a lot of us that have been there.
Wow.
When I arrived at Langley, there were 1,000 of us. When I went to Mars in 1964 with the survivors, there were only 20 of us. We had a really high death rate. And my group at Montauk in 1961-62, I was the only survivor. There were 5 of us that went. So we had really high casualty rates.
And they didn't care. They just.
They didn't care. They had a regen tank at Langley, and they would just regenerate you, bring you back from the dead until you became catatonic. And when you became catatonic, the regen couldn't fix that, or at least not with the tech that they had. So once you went catatonic, you went into the incinerator, and you ended up being what we call a milk carton baby.
So yesterday I watched this 2-hour tour of Preston Nichols to the Montauk base. They entered with a Japanese crew through the back door of this facility that was within the Montauk Park now, or Camp Hero Park, I think.
Camp Hero Park.
And yeah, and they went through with the camera for 2 hours. They had this walkthrough, and most of the base, it's actually it's like a small town on the upper level. I didn't expect it to be so, they had everything there, like
You didn't
bar.
expect it to be so normal.
It was so normal. They had a bowling alley there. They had a bar there.
Yeah.
They had a fire station. They had a post office and stuff like that. So yeah, and so he showed this base, and I was like, okay, 30 minutes in, it's boring, nothing happening. He's just describing things, and yeah, they went to this what they call the boys' bunker, and he described, these. They were like they called them tables, but they were like shelves, almost like higher shelves, where he said the boys were kept, and I didn't understand quite how they were kept there. He said they were just kept on these tables, and they were he said they were not conscious, they were in trance. The bunker is supposed to be not very far from the surface level, or maybe even on the surface level somehow. Do you remember?
We've been getting recovered memories more like 8 levels down, 8 to 20 levels down. And some of the levels were basically just bodies tossed in. The death rates at Montauk were outrageously high. If you got there and you didn't have any psychic abilities at all, you were immediately killed.
So why would they take you? They would just pick up someone randomly, or? They
were paying gangs to go through New York City and randomly kidnap children.
Wow.
And they would pay them for this. And on top of that, they also had people who were targeted because of their Genetics.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to explain something. The folks who talk about genetics never tell you that what these folks are looking for are ET genetics hidden in the population.
So, do you remember where you stayed at Montauk? Was it below ground?
Yeah, it was below ground, and I wasn't kept in a dog cage. I was kept in a large cage,
Hmm.
and the bars, it had like chain link, only thicker, and those would be sometimes electrified.
Oh, okay.
And when they were electrified, sometimes water would be dripped on us so that the electricity would go across. They didn't want to kill us outright, but they wanted to keep us upset,
Hmm.
because the more upset we were, the stronger our psychic abilities. And they wanted those to be at peak when they put us in the chair.
I see. Wow.
So it was torture. And as far as I'm concerned, completely unnecessary. But they had a rationale to it because it would enhance your psychic abilities and make everything else go easier.
So, who ran this project in your time?
I don't know.
Okay.
Um, I used to think it was the CIA,
Hmm.
but there was a CIA archivist who had processed my file, and she said it was the Office of Scientific Studies where my file came from.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that that agency was still in business at that time. The American government has thousands of agencies that nobody knows about. And so I really don't know who had Montauk at that time.
Do you think it was completely off the books from what they say the official story of Montauk is with the Brookhaven Institute, talking to the military in the 70s, in the beginning of 70s, and saying, okay, let's set up an experiment here, the Phoenix Project and everything. You think, and your time was obviously 10 years
My
before
time
it,
was before the Phoenix Project,
right?
but they had a chair
The chair
from
was there, yeah.
chair was there from the Roswell crash.
Uh-huh.
Um, Whoever it was had the blessing of the proper owners of the chair, whoever that was. There are so many agencies and so many programs, and going through and checking through the history, the programs change their name and who pays their bills about every 8 years.
Okay.
So it's really, really hard to track them. And a lot of these programs, you'll find, okay, it was called A for this length of time, and it was run by this alphabet agency, and then it's called B and run by this other alphabet agency, and then it's called C and it's run by this military group, and then it's called D and it's run by this military industrial complex corporation,
Okay.
and then you go through, and somewhere between 1985 and 1995, they all go dark. You can't
Hmm.
track them anymore. And I'm assuming that's when they went on the secret computer base. There are remote viewing programs that started in the 1950s, and you can track them all the way through until 1995, when they had Project Looking Glass replace them all.
Hmm.
And then Project Looking Glass just disappears because they couldn't see past 2012.
Wow.
And you have lots of these trails that suddenly just stop. And they're still doing this stuff, but you can't find it.
Yeah, and so I'm 30 minutes into this 2 hour very bad quality VHS transferred video. And
Yeah,
he
it
go,
was. It was. I've seen it. It's really poor quality.
yeah, and Preston goes, okay, this is someone else's office. This is the general secretary's office, and this is the alien's office, the reptilian. Okay. And so so he goes like,
The reptilian's office.
right.
Yes,
He goes like,
there.
this is the reptilian's office, and then he goes away and just doesn't, elaborate.
He doesn't say anything. Um,
Across the way was the alien's office, a reptilian. Across the way was the alien's office, a reptilian. Now we're in a console area.
we have recovered memories amongst the group of guys that I've been interviewing. And they say there were a group of rogue Draco that called themselves the Orion Syndicate,
Wow.
and that they were there and demanding to be fed the rejected kids.
So that was in what time frame?
That would have been 1980 forward.
Okay.
They finally came and took over the place in 2014 per the recovered memories. I don't remember being there then, but the guys that were keep telling me that I was. One of them even knew the name for my altar there. And I would just write it off as, recovered memories. Except that when I went to interview these people, I could pick out of a lineup which ones were real and which ones weren't. And there's no way I should be able to do that.